Well, everyone, we've reached the end of the unit 4 notes. So this is our last set of notes for this unit. So let's go ahead and jump into El Nino and La Nina. So these are the last pieces of our Earth systems notes. It's really important that we go over these two phenomenons because they really impact the climate. And so let's go ahead and start in on these. Okay. So, first of all, let's take a look and have a little bit of information about ocean surface currents. And so, there are these gyres, which are large ocean circulation patterns that are caused due to global winds. And so, they spin clockwise in the northern hemisphere. You can see these here. And then in the southern hemisphere, they spin counterclockwise. Okay, so you can see these here moving here. Okay, and so another important thing to remember is that we have east to west trade winds between 0 and 30 degrees, and those push the equatorial current from east to west. Okay, so this current actually moves this way and then spins around, moves this way and spins around. And that's what creates those gyres. And then the other important set of information that you need to know is that there's something called an upwelling zone. And upwelling zones are areas in the ocean where winds blow warm surface water away from a landmass. And what this does is it draws up the colder, deeper water to replace it. It actually brings in a lot of oxygen, so you can expect there'd be a lot of sea life in the area during that time. And there's a lot of nutrients that are brought to the surface. So this creates just a really productive fishing zone. And you can see these kind of the highlighted blue areas here off the coast of Central America, in parts of Southern California, and then here off the coast of Peru, here off the coast of Africa, again here off the coast of Australia. So you can see those nice upwelling zones that actually form, which is great for fishermen during those times. Okay, again, those winds pushing east to west. Okay. And then there's something called thermocline circulation, which connects all of the world's oceans by mixing salt, nutrients, and temperatures throughout. And you can kind of see the path that water takes. If it starts here off the coast of Florida, it's warm water, then cool water moves through deeper in the Atlantic Ocean around here. All right, or it can go here, kind of depending on what current it gets picked up on. And then the whole process can just sort of start over again. But you can see how the world's oceans are really all connected with that flow of water. And it mixes again the salt and nutrients and the temperature throughout. Okay, so warm water from the Gulf of Mexico moves towards that North Pole. It cools and evaporates as it moves to the poles. It sinks because salter and colder water is more dense. And so it causes that to sink. It spreads along the ocean floor. It rises back up into shallow, warm current ocean water at upwelling zones. Okay, so that's kind of the importance of what you need to know. All right, so that's sort of the background information that helps us understand then the El Nino Southern Oscillation, also known as ENSO. We tend to just call it El Nino and La Nina. But ENSO is basically a pattern of shifting atmospheric pressure and ocean currents in the Pacific Ocean between South America and Australia and Southeast Asia. And it oscillates or shifts regularly from El Nino, which is generally considered a warmer, rainier climate, to La Nina, which is generally considered a cooler, drier climate. And these are conditions along the coast of South America. That's what we base them on. So you can see here, we have a nice cell that's formed. All right, and so we've got the westerly winds coming against the weaker trade winds, and we've got this weak upwelling along the coast of South America. Okay, and so let's take a look at what happens and what's going on where. So here's a normal year, and we have the trade winds that blow equatorial water from the east, to the west. Okay, so you can see that in the picture here. It generally creates warmer conditions here along Southeast Asia. And there's also high pressure in the eastern Pacific Ocean here along South America. And this creates lower pressure in the western Pacific along Australia and Southeast Asia. And so they tend to get a rainier climate than South America and southern, yeah, United States or Central America. And then during El Nino, what happens is these trade winds weaken. And so they actually reverse and they move from the west to the east. And what that does is that pushes then the warm equatorial current actually brings heat because this current runs this way. And it actually brings heat and precipitation to the Americas, north and south. It suppresses the upwelling off the coast of South America, which is actually very damaging to the fisheries. And it creates cooler, drier conditions in Australia and Southeast Asia. So they're actually getting less rain. The rain is shifting then towards the United States or North America. And so there's also these pressures actually switch, and there's now a high pressure in the Western Pacific and a lower pressure in the Eastern Pacific. And so that's what happens during those El Nino years. Now, and then if we look below the water, what's happening is we actually see this thermocline with suppressed upwelling, and this lots of warmer water as compared to, I guess we didn't look at the underwater view here of a normal year, but you can see the red indicates that it's a lot warmer during an El Nino year. And then here we can see the La Nina, which is the opposite, is a stronger than normal trade wind. So this is almost like an exaggerated version of a normal year. That's how I like to think of a La Nina, where the trade winds are really blowing strong from east to west. This increases the upwelling. So we normally have an upwelling, but now we're going to have a much stronger increased upwelling, and that brings cooler than normal conditions, and they actually get just really good fisheries conditions during this time, so they profit a lot. But what it causes is a much warmer and a much rainier than normal conditions in Australia and Southeast Asia, which is not good for them. Okay, so again, this is like a cyclical event that just occurs over, like every 7 years or so, things are sort of shifting. So if I give you this information, and I'm not going to necessarily read all of this to you, but you should be able to figure out which is which. Okay. So you can pause here and kind of look at that and then determine which is which. And so here are your answers. This is an El Nino. This is a La Nina. You should be able to identify the various conditions and then be able to decide if it's El Nino or La Nina. And then same thing with the map. If you were to see this sort of a diagram, you should be able to determine if that's an El Nino or a La Nina. And I'm going to stop my webcam so you can see this entire picture. Okay, if you can pause here and really investigate this, because I'm going to show you the answer. And here is this picture, or the picture that was on the left is El Nino, whereas the picture on the right was La Nina. So you can see the conditions there and how they're different. Okay, so practice FRQ 4.9, this is our last for Unit 4. Describe 2 environmental problems that are related to the conditions of an El Nino event. I'm just going to remind you that this describe is one of your FRQ task verbs. So make sure you're going to the resources for our class in OneNote, and describe, you can look up what describe actually wants you to do and make sure that you follow those guidelines, because College Board expects you to understand what each of those task verbs mean. So just a little reminder, I know we talked about that at the beginning of the year, but it's important that you go back and review that information periodically so that you really kind of cement that in your brain so you're answering those questions as best you can. Okay, so this is it for Unit 4. I'll see you guys again for the first section of Unit 1, which I believe is Introduction to Ecosystems. See you guys then.